Matt Forde, hello, how are you?
Hello, Oli Dugmore. I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. Hanging in there.
Good.
I wanted to start this off. This is the question that everyone's being asked at the moment. I wanted to ask it of you, Matt. What is the current coronavirus guidance across the UK? Can you try to explain it for us?
Well, you know what? Oddly, I'm fairly clear on what it is for me, which is just stay indoors as much as possible. I was in the shielding group, so I didn't leave my flat for 3 months at the start of the. I was totally locked down. So for me, if I do go outside for like absolute, so I get my food delivered. If I go out, I wear a mask. I wash my hands. If I touch anything, I'm just ultra careful. So Um, in a way, because I'm so clear about what it means for me, I kind of am sort of not less bothered, but I kind of don't have to take it in because I'm like, I know what it means for me is I just have to lock myself away. But I think the rule of six is no more than six people indoors or outdoors, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And if it was the same across the country, I think people would find it much easier. And obviously, we had Boris Johnson the other day, couldn't quite remember it himself. I mean, this actually touches on it. We've got so much to talk about here. You're a comedian, you're a satirist, you worked on Spitting Image, you've got a book coming out, but there's something here. I think it's Armando Iannucci actually says this that in recent times he couldn't parody what's happening right now. He would struggle because reality is already, it's already like people, you couldn't believe it if you wrote reality, people wouldn't believe you. Have you struggled to satirize the current political landscape? Is that
Um,
a difficulty that you've had as well?
in short, no. But I mean, certainly with Spitting Image, the format of Spitting Image means that no one really is beyond satire because the freedom that you've got with puppets, the puppets themselves are are the root of the show, which is they are grotesque representations of influential and powerful people. So in themselves, can like the sort of the power of that is the impact of it, and then on top of that, you make them sound silly, you have them do silly things, but at the heart of every puppet of every sketch is that satirical grain of truth that really makes it resonate. So Spitting Image allows you to take people to weird and wonderful places and have them slap each other around the face and have cockfights or whatever you're going to do with them. So no one is above or below that. Spitting Image will always be able to give people a good old slap because of the nature of it. Obviously with stand up the last few years, I mean, in a weird way, I think if you're doing stand up about politics as I've been doing for the last few years, if anything, it got easier with Trump and Boris and Corbyn because before then, now I was touring comedy shows during the coalition years, and that is thin gruel. Not many people were that animated about Nick Clegg and Ed Miliband, whereas now people knew where they stood on Corbyn and Boris and Brexit and Trump and all these other things that were going on. That helped because audiences were more into it. Audiences were more politically aware. So um, on the one hand, I sort of get the point that politics has become ludicrous, but the flip side of that is the benefit. And with COVID, these people are on telly every day. More people know who Matt Hancock now, and Alok Sharma, Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance. It's given a whole new generation of people household names. So in a weird way, the turbulence and the crises, oddly, darkly, quite help.
Yeah, I saw one of your shows in London pre-pandemic, and there the room was the polarization was clear because the room was in hysterics as you were trolling Boris, and then you sort of moved on to the Corbyn segment of the gig, and there was obviously there was still I'm not trashing your show, like people were laughing, but you could tell there's like the mood in the air changes. I mean, you must be able to notice that on stage, right? I think you actually referenced it at the time.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't, and it's always been the way. It was the same with Ed Miliband. Is that audiences expect you to give the Tories a good slap, and of course you should, whether they're in government or in opposition. So I always do that bit first because that feels fair. They're in charge. Um, but oppositions make mistakes as well, and they fail, and they're incompetent as well, and that's funny. And it's kind of fun to poke the left and the right. But that is always the bit. In Edinburgh, I had people walk out during the Corbyn bit because they were just like, "This is too offensive." And I mean, I didn't think anything was gratuitous, but certainly I think some audiences would come and perhaps not expect that it would be broadened beyond the Tories. Although that said, anytime you give the Lib Dems a good old wallop, everyone likes it. So I would kind of do Tories first, then Labour, and I'll be on borrowed time during the Labour bit, get them back on side with the Lib Dems, end on Trump. And that has basically been the formula for the past 3 or 4 years.
That's also something with Spitting Image that I think one of the reasons of success is that it doesn't, it's not, there isn't really much of a political slant to it. It sort of, it skewers everyone. I mean, you voiced some of the characters. You've done Boris. You did Trump. Others as well. Am I right
Keir
in saying that?
Starmer.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, Sir Keir. Um, which did you enjoy? Which one did you enjoy most? Which one did you enjoy imitating the most?
Oh, Trump's the most enjoyable. That is like, particularly, we were recording some sketches late last night for this Saturday show, and there's just so much more you can do with him because he sounds silly, and I think there's a pleasure as well in doing. Not that I sound like Boris or Starmer, but doing like a big silly American voice, and really making him sound. So I've kind of done him. I do the standard Trump. It's great to be here. It's very beautiful, and you start off with the way he actually sounds and all things like that. But then making him, I kind of have him quite slightly like Eric Cartman, a kind of so like making some really grotesque, hey Mike, and being a kind of a bit of a brat, and then also something I've just started doing as we started Spitting Image. He's making kind of squeak, and he doesn't do this, but it's the sort of noise you can imagine him doing. So go, Mike, you can't trust people like that. They're sneaky. And kind of putting in really daft, really going for it with him. And then obviously you can't really do that with Keir Starmer at the moment. So Trump is a really daft, brilliant puppet to play with.
There's we should probably just touch on the debate from Tuesday. First of all, did you stay up to watch it?
No, I watched it the following day on YouTube.
Good for you.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Working tales. But I mean, what did you think? I mean, it was a shit show, wasn't it?
Yeah, but obviously, I mean, I just thought, I'm a big boxing fan, and Trump did what an inferior boxer does in a big fight: is you make it scrappy, you make it hard to judge, you grapple with your opponent, you hug them, you stop them landing the blows, which is what he did. He just talked over him. I think with these things as well, the moderator was appalling, and you think, well, you've got to really stop him doing this now, and it was like having a bad ref. So even though people said, oh, it's messy and it reflects badly on Trump, in a way, that's kind of what he wants. He doesn't want Biden to ever have a clear victory in these debates. And if you can get through, if something becomes messy, even if it's Trump talking over Biden, as a viewer, you're just left with the impression they're both talking over each other. You just go, oh, it's a mess. And you instantly tune out. So in a way, it was probably the smartest thing Trump could have done.
Just one final question on Spitting Image, and we can move on. But recent days, some people have expressed concern about Greta Thunberg's inclusion in the show. Obviously, she's a child. She's a child who has autism. Do you think she's fair game? Do you think her inclusion in the show is fair?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think, any show like this isn't just about world leaders. Spitting Image was always celebrities, whether it was footballers and the modern world influencers and climate change activists. Greta Thunberg's one of the most famous people on the planet. And I think with all these things, it's not about whether she should or shouldn't be in. It's about if she's in, and she should be because she's influential and important, how do we treat her? And that's the crucial thing, are the jokes we do with Greta's puppet acceptable or not? And I think when people see it, I haven't written on any of the Greta sketches, but as long as they're done in a fair way, then it's fine. And actually, when Spitting Image tweeted the picture, Greta Thunberg liked it on her account. So I think she's kind of into it. For a lot of people, it's a compliment having a Spitting Image puppet. It's a recognition that you're of a particular status.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And I think Piers Morgan revelled in it a little bit the other day.
Sadly, yes.
Do you? I'm interested because so there's the Greta puppet, and obviously that probably predictably prompts the outrage and the sort of the moralising. And I want to hear your take on this because, in my eyes, it's a problem actually that the British left has sort of fallen into in recent years. That moralising. It's almost as if it's lost its sense of humour. What's your take on that? Is that an analysis that you'd agree with?
I just think both sides are as bad as each other, really. I think we've got ourselves into trench warfare on the left and right, where people just offence has kind of become currency. So anytime someone says something that you don't like, or even if there's just a Greta puppet and people haven't seen any of the sketches yet, they go, this is outrageous. And you think, well, I think both sides want to claim that they're the victim because it then can justify sometimes quite terrible behaviour. So I think actually also most people don't think like that. Most people go, oh, there's a Greta puppet, that's cool, or they don't care or whatever. Most people really aren't in that trench warfare, but certainly things like Twitter make it feel like everyone falls neatly into those sort of train lines. Whereas, I think there's no doubt that some people sort of take offence a bit too easily at the moment on left and right, and look to take offence. And I just think most people don't live their lives like that. And if you do live like that, in the end, it becomes terribly humorless. There are things when comedy when it does punch down and when it's prejudiced, that it deserves to be called out, like with any culture or anything that's put in the public domain. But you also have to be able to laugh at yourself. And if you can't take a joke at all, then we're all doomed.
It's sort of a product of our times, isn't it? That these chambers exist in different places. We're all sort of pickling our brains in slightly different ways, whether it's middle-aged people in Facebook groups with fake news, or the incredibly sort of super progressive Instagram people who are sort of getting all of their politics from Instagram stories and not really engaging with the subject matter of an issue. It is an extraordinary political time. Segue, you've got a book, Politically Homeless, coming out soon. Tell us about it. What's it about?
So it's part memoir about getting into politics very young. I started getting into politics about the age of sort of 8 or 9. Joined the Socialist Worker Party when I was 14, left a couple of weeks later. Joined the Labour Party when I was 15, ended up working for it, ended up leaving it, ended up not voting for it, going on that journey that I guess very much a journey of my generation, really. And the sort of funny tales from behind the scenes of a brief political career that was frankly marred by and characterised by total failure. So there's some really good behind the scenes stories in there, and then just a kind of a comedic analysis of how politics went to shit.
Yeah, you're not, well, this is a quote, isn't it? All political careers end in failure. So you're not special in that sense, Matt.
Mine started as failure, continued as failure, and ended in failure. At least most political careers start with a level of success.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'll give you that. What's one of your favourite anecdotes? Tell one of your favourite parts of the book. A nice story of failure. One of your favourite failures, perhaps.
Well, it was the sort of first one where I really realised I'd properly not thought things through properly. And until you've worked in politics, it's so easy. I think sometimes when I see political commentators, and I have to remind myself that I kind of worked in that area for a bit, and sometimes to be a bit more generous about when mistakes happen, because anyone can make a mistake at work, and politics for the people who work in it is work. And it's so embarrassing. I was working for Labour. There was a by-election. I mean, it was just like a council by-election. It's the fact that it was such a crummy, wasn't even a big deal. It was a council by-election in Northampton. And at the time, so Blair was leader, and the big thing that week was the respect to gender. And he'd removed some graffiti with a high-pressure nozzle somewhere in London. So any Labour stunt that week in any by-election or whatever with any candidate was graffiti removal. It was all part of that week's grid and whatnot. And we had Jim Knight, who was then a minister, coming to Northampton to meet the candidate, and they said, just do some graffiti removal. I said, great. That it sounds just so simple, but then you go, well, what are we going to remove it with? I didn't have any resources. They said, well, just get a mop. Well, who from? So I asked the candidate, have you got a mop? He's got this crummy old mop with a rusty bucket. I was like, fine, we'll use that. I mean, I don't know what you clean graffiti off, not just, I was like, well, what with? And also at the back of your mind, you're like, I don't want to use something that's like toxic, and then people nearby are going to get like respiratory diseases from a Labour candidate anyway. I was worried about all the wrong stuff. So on the way there, get some Ajax, and I'm in the car with the candidate and the minister, and then it was only when we just got there, or almost there, and I thought, I haven't got any water to put in this bucket, because it's not just water in the street. I was like, fuck. So we pulled it. It was the first time I'd ever been to a Waitrose. It was just the nearest shop. I was like, we're going there. So I bought 8 litres of Evian, right? And I'm like, fine, because it was on offer. So I was like, just do everything. Get the cheapest thing just in case there's a receipt somewhere or whatever. The cheapest one was Evian. It was on offer. Get 8 litres of Evian. And then we pull it around the corner. I was like, don't do it nearby, because if the press get a picture of it anyway. So I go around the corner. I fill up this bucket with Evian. And then the guy, we get in there. There's a couple of local snappers and the local radio and whatever. They try and clean this thing. Just as they're about to do it, I can see like a bit of graffiti that says Mick sucks dick. I was like, I can't have that in the first. So I go and stand in front of it, and I'm thinking, right, I've done everything right here. Every little problem I kind of anticipated and everything else. They don't really get any graffiti off, but it looks good. They're putting their elbow grease into it. The following morning, the local paper in Northampton had a picture of me filling up the bucket with Evian. And the headline was, "Oh, yes, he did," but "oh," as in the French for water. And the whole article was like, "Oh, apparently the Labour Party don't think we have running water in Northampton in 2005. Jim Knight's jittering flunky was trying to remove graffiti with Evian." I was like, "Oh, fuck." And the worst thing was, it made me look like the most typical, like, Blairite tosser, which I am. But I'm not the sort of, like, London. I was like inner city Nottingham. I was like, how have I ended up using Evian and looking like such a sort of decadent prick? I was awful. I was just like, oh, fuck. I thought I'd done it right, and I thought I was going to get fired. Luckily, I didn't. But that was a real lesson. Like, oh my, you have to think through every single time, the smallest detail, in a way that you never really can, because something unanticipated will often happen. But that was painful.
Sort of the first lesson of SPAD school, isn't it? Is that you don't really want to become the story, or you sort of reach you reach the zenith of your career, and you then get your own press conferences. It's what I love actually about British politics is that because of the nature of the American presidential system, and In the Loop does this brilliantly, where there's Coogan's character is like constantly like berating, I think it's a minister, about like a dry stone wall in a garden or something that's like slowly in like 5 years' time is going to fall over. And it's what I love most about our politics is that there's always those like really, not that they're insignificant, but from cabinet to your surgery, and then someone shouting at you, "Have you ever cleaned up your own mother's piss?" or whatever. And you never see Barack Obama or Biden really in those situations. And for me, it's what I love about our system in comparison to them.
Oh, it's so true. It's so funny to do like the high and the low, to be there on like the international stage, talking about like cancelling third world debt, climate change, nuclear war, whatever. And then literally the end of the week, it's so funny when you go to like, I worked on the Sedgefield by-election after Tony Blair resigned, worked for Phil Wilson on his by-election there. It was surreal to like go to this mining town that had like this mining village in the middle of nowhere in the northeast that had this sort of dominant figure there that was sort of internationally known, and then would go down the Black Bull for a pint or whatever. That incongruous nature of British politics is what makes it so special, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. Matt Forde, it was a pleasure to speak to you.
Oh, mate, thank you.
When's the book out? Plug it.
The book is out on the 8th of October, and you can pre-order signed copies from Blackwell's.
Perfect. Matt Forde, thank you for your time. Speak to you soon.
Cheers, Ollie. Appreciate it. Thank you.